coroner has criticised a care home over the death of a retired clergyman. 73-year-old Raymond Powell, who had Alzheimer's, died in November after he went missing from the home at East Harling in Norfolk.
Raymond Powell's widow Janet was his sole carer. Last autumn she was finding it increasingly difficult to cope. Her husband had Alzheimer's and insulin-dependent diabetes, needing injections 3 times a day. But increasingly confused, he'd often wander off and refuse his medication. Social services arranged a week's respite care at this home in East Harling, which specialises in looking after people with dementia. Staff told how that first night Mr. Powell became aggressive, banging on doors, trying to force his way out through a fire exit. He seemed to calm down, but around midnight he was missing. A bit later, they found a towel he'd been carrying on a gate outside. The Norfolk police helicopter spotted him 36 hours later, lying in a ditch 2 miles away. He died in hospital a few hours later. The home said all external doors were locked and coded. Its best guess was that Mr. Powell got out through a resident's bedroom window. Coroner William Armstrong said the home had been told of Mr. Powell's propensity to wander and his refusal to cooperate over taking insulin. He should not have been able to leave the building.
I wish to record my deep regret that my loving husband of 47 years should have died in the way that he did. It was tragic that it happened in this way and involved Raymond in much suffering. It should not have happened.
We have learnt that there are people with dementia who are still fit enough to leave the premises if they're determined enough, and we have taken measures to try to prevent that ever recurring again.
The coroner praised the home for learning lessons and said there was no question of any individual carer being at fault. He said Raymond Powell had been a true and faithful pastor. He should be remembered not for the manner of his death, but the quality of his life. Kim Riley, BBC Look East.
More than 100 senior doctors say they're worried about the future of Ipswich Hospital. The unit's losing some specialist cancer surgery, and there's been a row over heart attack patients being moved to other centres. The consultants are expected to release a letter decrying what they say is the gradual running down of services.
We very much hope that it will do some good, and it will provoke a debate about the direction of services in East Suffolk. The population of East Suffolk have a right to know where services are going, which services will be provided on this site and which services will not be provided on this site in future.
A murder inquiry is underway after a man was found dead in Colchester. His body was discovered in an empty flat in Charles Pell Road. The man in his 50s had been strangled and stabbed. He's thought to have lived nearby. 2 other men from the town have been arrested.
A total of 12 candidates will be standing in the by-election in Norwich North. Nominations closed late this afternoon. Here's Andrew Sinclair.
Yes, if you were hoping to stand, it's too late. All the papers are in, the deposits have been paid, and now we know for sure who's standing. Labour, the Conservatives, the Lib Dems and the Greens, of course. Also Glenn Tingle of the UK Independence Party and Robert West of the BNP. And then there's a series of smaller parties, the Libertarian Party. There's one called None of the Above. There's the monster raving loony party and a party called Put an Honest Man into Parliament. And then there's a couple of independents, Peter Baggs and Bill Holden. Polling day is a fortnight's time on July the 23rd.
And this is the man who takes all the candidates' money and makes sure their nomination is in order.
They have to pay either banker's draft or cash.
Broadland Council's Colin Bland will be the returning officer for this election. He must meet with every candidate, ensure they have 10 nominations from local people and represent a party that's been officially registered.
We also have to find out the party description they wish to use and also which emblem they want printing onto the ballot paper.
How much of a logistical exercise is it organising a by-election?
It's a fantastic exercise.
So while he worries about that, the parties are stepping up their campaigning. This morning, the Justice Secretary Jack Straw listened to a band in a pub as part of a scheme to tackle antisocial behaviour. Meanwhile, yesterday, the Shadow Chancellor was at Norwich Airport. The politicians are excited about it all, but what about the voters? Who better to ask than a local newsagent?
I certainly am, and a lot of my customers who I've spoken to are as well. They want a person to follow Ian Gibson, who was a very good MP.
But that's just one opinion. There are still plenty of people here who are disillusioned altogether with politics.
We're all basically the same.
Will you vote?
No.
Are you impressed with any of the parties?
Not particularly, no.
There are still people who the parties need to win over. If you live in Norwich North, you won't get much peace over the next fortnight. Andrew Sinclair, BBC Look East.
And while in Norwich, the Justice Secretary explained his decision to refuse parole for Ronnie Biggs. Jack Straw was campaigning close to the prison where the great train robber will return when he comes out of hospital. Mr Straw insisted it was right to keep him in jail.
He escaped and was abroad for 35 years and seems to show no sense of remorse for that either. Mr Biggs would have been released decades ago had he just served his time like the others.
He's a frail old man.
Yes, and I'm afraid that there are quite a lot of elderly people in prison. They're there because the courts sentence them to prison. They're cared for as well as they can be, and there are quite separate arrangements, not to do with parole, for compassionate release if people are close to the end of their life.
In cricket, both batsmen from Essex were dismissed before lunch on the first day of the first test against Australia. Opener Alistair Cook was caught by Michael Hussey, good catch as well, for just 10, and Ravi Bopara was caught by Hughes for 35, 10 minutes before the break. England 3-3-6 for 7 at the moment. Norwich City have signed the Australian goalkeeper Michael Theokokalaitis. He's 28 years old, he signed for 2 years, and he comes on a free transfer. His contract in Australia at League champions Melbourne Victory had run out.